Hey, welcome to Funding Insights. This is my weekly newsletter, and this is episode number 2. And today I'm doing a personal interview of myself so I can talk a bit more openly. I'm not here to try and win business, I'm not here to try and get likes or impressions. It's just, what I think and various questions along that. So we're going to start with the background and move through the fundraising landscape, building the team. Yes, my sector and topic of conversation is fundraising, but to be an expert of that, I've had to master business and every single element of it. And I am a lot more rounded than perhaps the one topic. So today we'll potentially touch on some of that. So we'll start at the beginning. What inspired you to become an entrepreneur, and how did you transition into the world of startups? Well, for me, it was thrust upon me, I guess. I'm from a single restaurant family, so I grew up and we had a sandwich shop, which then, in sort of like my in the late '90s, turned into a buffet restaurant, and that's where I cut my teeth. Really, growing up every day after school, we'd go to the restaurant or we'd go to the sandwich shop. So I was already in that sort of mindset of going to work, even though I was less than 10 years old. And we'd sit there until the shift had finished. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved the people. I loved the cash. Looking at, being 10 years old and even seeing a couple of £100 in £20 notes. I mean, it was just like mind blowing. And I guess the ego as well. From a young age, I remember going places and people would always say, "Oh, I've been to the restaurant. I've been to there. Oh, I love the, we were buffet restaurants, so we did hot dogs and beans. But people say, "Oh, I love the hot dogs. Oh, I always have this." And I guess in a way, I sort of felt proud of what we'd done as a family. And that's something that really drives me now. Like, I do genuinely love it when people say, "Oh, I've seen what you've done with Inverse. It's amazing," and everything else. So that kind of inspired me. When I went to school, I was useless. I was hopeless at school. I aced English, which isn't a surprise. Now, a lot of my work is text based and writing and talking, but I absolutely aced English A, and I failed everything else, especially maths. 5 times I failed maths GCSE. So university wasn't an option. In fact, when everyone else went to the uni open days, school held me behind. I wasn't even allowed to go to them. So I left at 16 instantly into being a dishwasher in the restaurant, realized, oh no, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And I had to start my own. For us and our businesses and our family, business isn't a purpose. Business isn't a passion. Business is the way that you pay your bills, and I've got that mindset still today. Yes, nowadays I've got the luxury of choice a little bit where I can merge passion and purpose with the business, but when it first started, it was just I knew how to produce food at scale, so I opened a healthy fast food shop. We saved up 12K over about a year, and yeah, we just got stuck in. We took a lease, got 6 months rent free, hired our first employee, and off we went. We scaled that to multiple sites, and we got a local sort of merger acquisition from a local PLC. So yeah, it was quite fun, but that's kind of why I don't have that purpose. It's more necessity. We're from Newcastle. You have to make money, otherwise you don't have a house. Can you share a critical lesson from the early days of your journey? Yeah, the biggest lesson I've got, and the one that I wish I'd known back then, was don't let something default back to zero value. It's the biggest mistake. I see it time and time again. Not just looking at micro acquisitions, but just making sure you don't. If you've put effort and time and love, and you've built even a small community around a business, that's worth more than £1. It's worth a lot. 10K, 20K, 30K, 50K. And I wish back then I was in that mindset of not letting something default to zero value and understanding before there's a bit in a 0 to 1 journey where the business is going well and where it's starting to erode, and a bit more hindsight, which I've got now, I can spot that a lot better and you can get out of those situations. And yeah, I think that's something critical I learned from my early days, was that reflection back on wondering why did I keep letting stuff just die or go to zero and just walk away. So that's something I really push on people now. And most of the calls I have are like, look, if it ever starts getting hard, don't just let it die. Try and get out, try and get an exit. Even if it's 50K, you'll thank yourself so much and it'll benefit you 1,000 times more than that money ever will. fundraising, from experience, one of the most common misconceptions founders have about pre-Series A fundraising. I think that's twofold. The first thing is everybody thinks it's easy, process-driven, metric-driven, merit-driven. It's not. It's none of those things. Fundraising is random at best. It's difficult. It's long. It took me 9 months to raise my first fundraising round, and I got a VC that signed, pretty early in that. And again, it was just convincing them. I used to go and park the wrap. This was for a car wrapping business, so I used to go and park the wrapped cars, like a silver chrome Ferrari, outside of their VC office in Newcastle. So it's not easy, and there's lots of external factors, such as market conditions and everything that comes into it. The other side is that you need professional help. I mean, the whole fundraising industry is bullshit in the sense of it's designed to extract capital, not give capital. The VC model in itself is someone else's money that they're charging a fee on, and then they get all of their mates to sell you professional services. And I appreciate I'm part of that now. And that's why we're trying to really take it down to its core principles in terms of what are you trying to do, outreach documents, modeling, etc., and let people actually understand. So yeah, I think with the common misconceptions are that you have to buy stuff. You don't have to buy SEIS. It makes no difference to your fundraising round whether you have SEIS or not. You can do that at the end. You don't need to pay seed legals for a pitch page. It's irrelevant unless you've got an investor who loves you and loves what you do. It's all irrelevant. So focus on maximum viable product. What's the least amount of time and effort I can put into something, a fundraising project that's going to get an outcome? And that's normally a pitch deck. That's normally, the way that you present yourself and ask, what are you actually asking for your use of funds? You don't need to pay money for any of that stuff. We're all capable. So yeah, think about that, I think. And that's something I try and preach a lot. And that's why I give away my knowledge for free constantly, because you just don't know what you don't know. And that's the trap that I fell into ultimately. With my VC funding in particular, they gave me a solicitor, and it was one of the best solicitors in Newcastle. And I remember I felt so proud going into their office to sign the document. They charged me nearly 20K to negotiate term sheets. I look back now, it's just criminal. And none of my entrepreneurs who I work with will ever pay those type of fees. We just avoid them, absolutely. But for whatever reason back then, that was just the mindset I was in, that you were given professionals, I was given an FD, I was given legals, and it all to me felt like validation that I was now doing something. So yeah, that's a misconception, definitely. And how do you navigate the complexities of securing funding, and what strategies worked best for you? There is only one strategy: create a compelling offer and get in people's inboxes. Sometimes it's not as easy as getting in people's inboxes, and I always give the example of social credit. I have a lot of social credit because I've got a lot of reach. I've got a big audience. I've got a huge client base. I've got great testimonials. I've got great relationships. I do favors for people. I help people out. So my social credit's very high. However, when you go to spend social credit, it's not as straightforward as that. You have to then engage in that process with that person individually. You have to then basically have a value exchange at that point. So don't just think you can rock up on someone's door with your startup plan. And again, this is the biggest strategy, and we still do it now, and it's something we're trying to replicate on a more scalable basis. But the only strategy that works to secure funding is create a compelling ask and get in the relevant investor's inbox. Don't overcomplicate it. That's as simple as it is. And anybody who does try and overcomplicate it, at the end of the day, yeah, you have to wonder why. And it's normally because they're selling something in that process that you sort of have to follow. So again, there's no complexity in fundraising. It's make a compelling pitch and get it in the right person's inbox. The complexity comes when you're actually transferring your social credit and trying to spend that with people in your network. And again, if you just take a blanket approach to that, you'll fail. You have to still, at that point, give and take, provide value, understand what they're working on, if there's anything that you can help with. And if you're in that relationship where you can give and take, ultimately you can do whatever you want. Building and leading. When building your early stage startup team, what qualities did you prioritize in potential hires? Now, it's interesting because I've worked across three sectors: food and hospitality, automotive, which was unbelievably difficult, complex operations. We were stripping factory delivered Rolls Royces, £250,000 cars, changing their appearance, putting them back together again, and then sending them off to their clients. So that was incredibly detailed operational business. And finally, now I run a corporate finance company. So that's quite different. And I'll tell you for each one, the hospitality business, you know, that's all about the engine. It's all about, output and how do you get the food right. And I loved that bit. My first job was in the family restaurant kitchen. So I took that job. I took the business. I could do the socials from down there. I was out the way. So for us, it was really important to have someone really personable, front of house, who could engage with our customers, build that repeat base. When you're selling lunchtimes in a small city, so you sell lunchtime meals in a small city, the most important thing is that, friendly banter with customers, because that's how you get repeat custom and you get that loyalty. And that's something we absolutely nailed. So for us then, the most important person was someone with a personality who people liked. When we moved to the car business, that is now, as I told you, extremely difficult. So I needed someone who, I couldn't do that. I'm not a mechanic and I can't wrap or fit window tint. So I had to find that person, and they had to be, the forward face of the business in that sense. So in that business, I identified a very different gap, which was technical, highly specialized talent. And again, we nailed that. We were profitable business pre VC funding. We had 50,000 followers. I was doing Premier League footballers, Floyd Mayweather, Anthony Joshua. It was some, really exciting times. But again, at the same time, that was a really unique challenge. And now in this business, my most important hire, Inverse was my idea and it was my decision to start the company, but I couldn't have done it without my co-founder, Ivan. He's got the exact opposite skill set of mine, and in this business that's what I need. I'm great with brand and product and all of those amazing things that entrepreneurs are generally good at, but I'm awful at finance, or at least I was. I've now had a 4-year training course, I think, or yeah, I've been working with Ivan, no, 3.5 years training course, into what it actually means to run the financial side of a business, and that was missing. That's why I made such an awful deal in the business before. So understand what your gap is. Ultimately, who I hired for my food business would have been an awful hire for Inverse, our corporate finance business. So you have to balance that a little bit, of course. How do you ensure that your team stays aligned with the startup's vision and goals as you grow? I mean, after a decade plus of employing people, the only thing that matters the most is that you pay them on time and fairly for their work, and you compensate them for anything that's outside of that scope. That alone puts you as a pretty good boss and actually caring about them, personally. Beyond that, including them in the vision and the plans, and if you can't take your own team on that journey and you can't motivate a small group of people by your passion and your drive for the company, you don't stand a chance ultimately in the longer term. So I think that having a motivated team is all about respect, paying them what they're due on time, never miss a payday. And in the early days, I remember, and when it started to go wrong in the car business again, that's the first thing that breaks the boat. That's when you start getting a leaky ship, is when, if your staff expect payment at midnight on Friday, suddenly, in the afternoon on a Tuesday, or, or sorry, on the afternoon on a Sunday, for example, that's when it starts to wobble. And that's when, in fact, it's just the basics. And I met someone a long, long time ago, and I said, "Oh, how he was super successful." We were sitting in a sushi bar in London, and I was a bit drunk because I'm from Newcastle. So we were chatting, and I said, "Oh, how do you do it? How do you become a multi-millionaire? And how do you have the Ferrari outside?" He said, "I'll pay your gas bill." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, if you don't pay your bills at home and that's a priority, then you have a fractured home life. And if you've got a fractured home life and there's tension, you can't go to work and you can't motivate your team and you can't drive it forward." So, the simple things are what we often overlook, but are often the things that drive us forward and furthest in the long run. So, yeah, in my my methodology, the best way to, you know, ensure your team stays aligned is to treat them well and with respect, and that means make sure they get paid on time. Product development. Can you describe a moment that you realized you'd achieved product market fit and the challenges you faced getting there? Yeah, my first business, the healthy fast food store, there's a fitness influencer, a guy called Mike Thurston, and at the time he must have been 21 or 22 years old. I think we went out for his 21st birthday together, and it was just me and him. Um, but I identified I needed something to connect with my audience. So I paid for Mike's first ever gym membership. I paid for it, well, his first ever sponsored gym membership, I presume. And I just gave him a gold membership to the local David Lloyd's. And the idea being that you would eat food and post pictures of it and look great, and go and Google Mike Thurston. You'll see how gorgeous this guy is. And he was, the face of my business. And I got market fit through that because eat this food and look like him. It was easy. Similar with the cars. I reached out to a local DJ, a guy called Kenrick, who was super cool in Newcastle, and he had this BMW at the time, a white BMW 4 Series, and I just said, "Oh, hey, start a car app in business. Let me sort your car out." And I wrapped it for him for free because I knew he was just going to park it outside the nightclub. And he did. He drove straight to the nightclub, blacked out windows, matte green wrap on it. The car looked unbelievable. And that was it. The business got market fit there because everyone wanted to look like Kenrick. Now, with startups, it's not that easy. With this business in particular, corporate finance, it's all about leveraging reputation. And ultimately, the challenge that we have here is that no one wants to pay for the product that we deliver. No one wants to pay for advice. No one wants to pay. Why would I pay you to raise me money when I've got no money? So product market fit in this business was really challenging, and it's taken us about 2 to 3 years generally to get there. And we can only do that by testing with customers, selling them a product. Did they like it? Or no, hated it? Okay, what can we do to improve? Can we fix the relationship? Yes, no, and go on from there. So again, lots of different businesses, lots of different examples, but you can only do it by putting your product out there and seeing if people like it or not. If they like it, great. Is it sticky? Do they want to keep buying it, or is it just a meh? Because that's the problem that we had. People would use this inverse, and they liked us. They liked the product we were selling, but they weren't compelled to keep on going. And when we fixed that, that was the moment where we realized, okay, people want to sign up for us in the long run. People who don't raise funding recommend me, and that's crazy. Like, I sold a product that failed, but they still recommended to me someone in their network who they have got trust from because they understood what we were doing. And that to me was a real moment where I realized that, yeah, we've got product market fit here. How do you approach feedback and criticism? It's really important. Criticism's something you take with a pinch of salt, especially when you come from the hospitality industry. You can do everything perfect and get a plate of food thrown back in your face because they're in a bad mood. They've been walking around a shopping center all day, the middle of town. It's hot, busy. They had to wait 40 minutes to get sat down and get some food, and they're just miserable people. So you have to take that with a pinch of salt. But now I guess when we're working with more seasoned entrepreneurs and people whose opinions I trust, it's a lot easier, and it's never criticism, it's more constructive. If you frame it, or if you let the breakdown of the relationship get to the point where the only feedback you get is criticism, then I think that kind of highlights a problem. So you should be able to end an engagement on a positive relationship basis, and then there can be constructive feedback on what you've delivered to the product, to the client. And again, that's kind of, again, where you get that feedback from early users. And yeah, it shapes your product evolution massively because you learn from that. What strategies or tactics have been most effective for scaling your startup in its early stages? Well, the only thing that ever really matters is eyes on the prize. Marketing is the most important aspect of any business. So scaling in that original moment should always be done by leveraging networks and personal connections and taking a chance on people. Again, to go back to the Mike Thurston thing, he wasn't even he just started a personal trainers at the time. I just knew the guy was special, and I took a chance on him. And by the time He finished with us. He had 150,000 subscribers, and he's now got a million plus. He's amazing. But again, you have to bet on people, and you have to bet on networks, and you have to take a bet on yourself. And that's the only thing you can do to scale your startup. You never ever need to scale your team or your operations before you scale revenue. So, forget all of that stuff. That's all manual. That's until you can afford to build, hire a full stack developer who's going to turn it into software. And before you can afford to be certain on that direction, it's all sales. So, again, if you're an early startup founder and you're wondering what to do next, sales. Go and sell your product, get into networks, get it out there. That's the only way you can do it. How do you balance the need for growth while maintaining product quality and user satisfaction? Personal relationships. Personal relationships can cement over any crack in the world, anything, even the relationship fractured between international geopolitical situations can be smoothed over by good personal relationships. If you're a ghost in your business, you're a ghost to your clients, and they have a bad experience working with you, they're going to slate your business because it's not personal. No one's going to be horrible to someone that genuinely tries. If I really came to your house today as a cleaner and you watched me for hours and hours and I was scrubbing away and I left and it was still dirty, you're not going to criticize or complain. You're going to let me know that maybe there was a few problems, but because you've seen me working hard, we've had a chat during the day, that achieves a lot. So when scaling your business and you're trying to maintain quality and while growing, personal relationships, that's the trick. There's no other trick. Mentors and networking. How have mentors and advisors played a role in your startup journey, and how did you establish these critical relationships? I think there's a bit of a myth around mentors, and the myth is that you need to have a weekly session with them. Some of my biggest mentors don't even know they mentored me. In fact, if I told them that I thought they were a mentor now, it would probably freak them out. There's a guy called Ian Baggett in Newcastle, and I remember we were sitting at the top of the Baltic. It was like an event in Newcastle. And I'm sitting there, and I eventually sort of like sit next to the guy, and the guy's like, the epitome of success. And he just talks, and he talks for an hour, and I learned more in that hour having an informal conversation than I would in any engagement with any coach or leadership coach, because it was just a normal conversation. And ultimately, what I took from that was that his level of ambition was way beyond what I even thought was realistic, and he was nailing it, like not just nailing it, like he wanted to shape the skyline of the city. And I remember sitting there looking over the city with him. He's like, that's my building, I'm building one there. And I was like, does that inspire you? And he was like, yeah, that's what drives me. I want to shape the landscape of my own city. And here's me at that time thinking about washing people's cars, and I've got someone saying that you can shape the skyline of a city. So mentoring isn't hourly sessions, it's amazing people and listening to them and having conversations with them. And you can do that by being yourself and getting yourself in situations where that can happen. There's another guy who saved my life, really. A guy called Paul Godin, and yeah, he's just unbelievable. He was my dad's friend. My dad lived down in Cambridge. He grew up there, and Paul and my dad grew up together in Cambridge. Used to go to the Polytechnic College, and Paul's gone on to have an amazing career. And after my VC funded business died, Paul was the only one who would take a chance on me. And it wasn't a massive chance. It wasn't probably not even anything that he really noticed at the time as being a chance, but I felt like I was down and out. And again, he wasn't trying to do anything special. He was just getting on with his business, and I got the opportunity to just watch. We never had one-on-one sessions where he was giving me these life hacks. It was just I got to watch Paul, who's incredibly great at what he does, go about his daily business. And to me, that was the best mentoring I've had in my life. It remotivated me. It gave me a set of principles and beliefs that I still use today. So mentors aren't what you think they are. So don't put that type of pressure on it. You'll find people in your journey who just say one thing and it can change everything. For early founders looking to expand their networks, what strategies or platforms would you recommend? I mean, there's no platform that's going to solve any problem ever, so forget it. We're used to platforms because we've got stuff like Rightmove in the UK or Zoopla or whatever it's called in America or Taiwan. It's all the same. I put my property on there, I passively list it, and someone comes and buys it. Startups aren't like that. That's why it doesn't exist. The only way you can expand your network is by finding people that you think are cool or relevant, providing value to them. And that can be as much as being a consistent comment in their LinkedIn. You do that for 6 weeks and someone will notice you. It's not difficult. Everyone cares about their LinkedIn and their personal brand. Even look at these guys like Simon Squibb and you know, Alex McDonald, all these exited founders, they're still on LinkedIn every day and communicating, show up, be relevant, be constructive, be positive, be that person that sprinkles a bit of positivity every day in their life and you'll get noticed. And once you get noticed, you can start to build a relationship. So that's how I've always done it, I've always looked for the person that I want to work with or want to be or think I can add value to. I'll just be super constructive and positive in their life and in their networks and in their business and be their cheerleader. And in the end, they'll say, "Hey, what do you want? What can I do to help you?" And it's as simple as that. Don't overcomplicate it. Just find people that you think are cool and add value to them, and you can do that by just being positive. Because God, does everyone need positivity? Challenges and resilience. Can you share a particular challenge? Yeah, I remember, this is my podcast or newsletter, so I can say what I want. I remember the day, two things, two big moments for me. One was when I'd taken my healthy fast food business as far as I could go. And what that means is we'd got to a couple of sites. I'd now doing JV with another business and it was crumbling in a sense. Like I just wasn't that, I'd never had more than one site. It was new to have two. And the thought of, the JV that I'd done at the time was to get to 20, to get to 30. And I remember on a particular day, I got told my granddad had cancer, and that was enough for me for the dominoes to fall. I remember sitting outside the back of the restaurant, just heartbroken, just sobbing, and I bundled them all together. I bundled that pain with the pain of the business, and it was just like, right, I need to draw a line to move on from here, and that is something I've got better at with time, is separating things. I remember once my dad came in, this is really early business years, like 17, 18, and I was like, oh, this has failed. And he went, oh, what have they done? And I did used to blame things a lot on people or relationships. And I think ultimately I just didn't have the ability to separate them back then. So that's a really that's a phase that I went through in business where I thought everything was a negative, everything was a relationship, everything was a something. And I ultimately bundled it up. And it means that you walk away from all elements. You walk away from the business, you walk away from the personal relationships, you walk away from everything. And in fact, you don't need to do that. So that was challenging. And that's something I still think about to this day, obviously. The next thing is, the day the liquidators were called in my automotive business, it's like an unbelievable feeling. I went for lunch with the VC the day before, and actually we paid for the lunch, I paid for the lunch, which really, again, it's that balance. It's really weird. But I remember them saying to me that, they weren't going to reinvest, and we'd done a tranche funding deal and we weren't going to get the second tranche. And I went back to the business, and then that's when the bailiff came in. And the advice, obviously, at the time was speak to an insolvency practitioner and bust the business, because there's a picture on my LinkedIn. It's in my featured posts of the day that the business went bust. Had Ferraris, Rolls Royces, everything in there. It was about 2-3 million quid's worth of cars, probably, including outside, plus 11 staff, plus customers coming to pick it up. And the bailiff said, "Oh, if you don't pay this rates bill," it wasn't much. It's never much in the end that busts. It was like 10K or something. Then we're going to take the cars and the trucks on its way. And, I used to, in the morning, I used to have cameras outside the garage, and I'd watch the bailiffs waiting outside the garage for me to open up so they could, knock on the door, etc. And I'd get the team and I'd take them to meetings, other places. So, I went through this whole phase of running and hiding behind the curtains. And, that was really hard. And the biggest regret for me is that I just didn't know enough at the time to understand fundraising as a whole process. I never even applied to another person to try and get fundraising. I just took the no from the VC, we're not going to give you any more money, kind of as a, oh, well, that's us dead then, And I think that's a big challenge that I had to sort of overcome and come through my own journey. And again, that's what drives me now in this phase of my life. The next phase is going to be a bit more creative, but for now, I'm really trying to help people in that position. I'm really trying to fix people's businesses who feel like they don't know what to do. How do you maintain resilience and motivation, especially during the low points? You don't. It's pointless to pretend that you do. You've got to have a tolerance for pain. You've got to have a tolerance for rejection, denial, for people telling you you're not good enough. You've got to have a tolerance for that. There's a part in my journey where I was taken hostage. I was delivering cars, obviously, because we had a car business. And it happened to me twice. I just delivered a car to Essex. And when I got out of the car, they looked around it and then they invited me into their restaurant because that's where I delivered the car to. They locked all the doors. There was people waiting in there with bats. And they said, refund us for the car and also pay us 10K. You're not getting out here today. And, that's something I don't expect every startup founder to go through. And the second time it happened was the same. I went to Liverpool and I dropped the car off in an industrial estate. And again, they wanted their money back. They wanted, they wanted a lot of unreasonable stuff. And, I remember just sitting there with nothing, just thinking like, what's going to happen to me? And again, there's nothing you can do apart from try and escape. So resilience, motivation, you have to believe deep down in yourself that you're worth more than what you're worth now. I still believe that today, that I'm worth more than I am now. And, I want to make other people proud. It's not all about me. It can't be all about me. I've got things that I want to do with my dad. I've got things that I want to do with my brother, my own kids. There's stuff that I want to do that I haven't unlocked yet. And that's really what drives me. That's why I stay up till 2 a.m. working and get back up at 7, because that's my motivation. So in your low points, it's all about trying to be as balanced as you can and understanding that not every day is going to be amazing. And some days you're going to end up taken hostage on an industrial estate in Liverpool, but you can't do what I did, which was give up and say I was never going to have a business again. And I never was. I truly never was after that experience. I just let it, that's why I said to myself with the VC funded business, I just haven't got that fight in me anymore. I can't keep doing this. It happened too many times to me, and I just gave up. And I wish, the resilience now just comes from being more balanced. I still have challenges. Granted, I work remotely, so you're never going to be able to take me hostage. But we still have situations where it's rough. They're not enjoyable. But I feel a bit more balanced now in terms of what I'm trying to achieve and understanding that this isn't me. Inverse or my business or the games company that I start next with my brother, that's not me. That's the business, and I am me, and I can be a good person and let someone down in business, and that's not me. That's separate. And I think that's a big, there's a difference between your personal self and your business. And I think that we get wrapped up in it all because again, I named my car company after myself. It was Muss Styling. People used to call me Muss, and people now call me Jamie Inverse. And again, it's like that's not me. I'm Jamie Muss at Harford or Jamie Harford. That's me. So I think that again, to maintain resilience, you have to separate yourself and you have to have something bigger than just you. Like you wanting to be rich isn't enough to wake up and drive every day. You need to want to change the lives of people around you. I'm on a mission to make as many millionaires as I can. That's why I love fundraising, because I'm making millionaires every year. And, I want to make my sister a millionaire who works with me. I'm excited to make Ivan a multi-millionaire when we sell the company. That's exciting for me. And I've got, me and my dad want to go to the Galapagos. We want to, you see me smiling, like that's the stuff that gives me that motivation and resilience ultimately. Where do I envision our startup in the next 3 to 5 years, and what milestones are we targeting? I mean, for me, the big thing that I've not done yet is that big exit. I seem to have done everything else. I've bootstrapped to over $1 million in revenue. I've maintained a brilliant network and audience, and we've got a great business now. And, I want to hit that exit. I want to be that person. And every day I'm working with exited entrepreneurs. I'm working with investors who've exited, and, I can see it. It's right there. I understand what we've got to do, but you have to let time pass a little bit. And I think one of the big things for me unlocking this section of my life was I said to myself I was going to walk 10K a day until my life changed. And I only did one 10K walk, because on that I realized that it's not an overnight thing. And I just need to get better at letting time pass me by. I'm one of these people that, unless I sell my month's target today, I'm not happy. Unless I've, hit that target, I'm not happy. So, over the next 3, 5 years, my target is really let that time pass and be happy with the time passing, and ultimately get something out at the end of it. A personal target for me is to start a games company with my brother. I'm super passionate about video games, and I know it's mental. I know people think, oh, you're so immature because you play video games, but it's more than that for me. It's something I've shared with my brother since we, loaded up whatever on our first ever platform, the N64, playing stupid Mario games together. It's something we just love and share. So it's something that I want to put out into the world as more of a creative project. So, yeah, I think there's a personal and professional one there. With the constantly evolving startup landscape, how do you ensure that your company remains agile and adaptable? Well, it's hard because, again, I'm a bootstrapped founder. So you see stuff come close to what you're trying to do, and it's got obvious backing and polish behind it. And you've got to take those moments when you see those to understand what they are, what's their purpose, and kind of re-engineer their roadmap a little bit and understand where they're going, and then understand what lane they're in and what lane you need to be in. I mean, remaining agile isn't a thing. It's just your business. You started, it's new, it's relevant, and as time goes on, it becomes less relevant because everything changes so quickly. So I think, again, understanding who your competitors are and where they're going, finding your lane that you want to be in, and just be ruthlessly focused on that, for me, seems to be the big trick here to remaining, agile. All that stuff is just saying, how do you stop your business from dying, as, Russian war, cost of living crisis, inflation, everything that happens. How do you still stay there? Since I've been raising fundraising rounds, e-commerce has died. We did loads of e-commerce marketplaces. That's just fell off a cliff, and the whole landscape's changed. Facebook ads has changed. iPhone's changed. Everything changes. So the only way you can stay in the game is by understanding who the well-funded rivals are, what their roadmap is, and making sure that you understand yours. Sorry, I live in Spain, so there's flies trying to attack me. Based on your experience, what advice would you give to founders who are just about to embark on their first fundraising journey? And are there any books, resources, courses, podcasts that were pivotal in shaping your journey? No, never read a book in my life. Don't watch podcasts. Never been on a course. I went on a cocktail making course, and I met one of my best friends there, a guy called Cameron. And my God, I love that guy. We just have the best time. But I didn't learn anything about business. It was about making amazing cocktails. But ultimately, again, I think those sort of things are just the people, the networks that come out of it. And that's the kind of person I am. There's people who I still meet on a daily basis now who I just love. I just love people. I love meeting new people. I love hearing their stories. I love telling them mine. So yeah, people who are about to embark on this journey, just understand that it's relationship based, and treat it as such, treat it as a relationship, and treat it as something that's bigger than just an investment ticket. And if you can do that, you'll go all the way. The other thing is, take your time. You can't rush fundraising. If you're in a position where you can't launch your business without fundraising, just throw it in the bin and think of another business. I mean, again, you have to do those hard yards yourself at the beginning, and that normally is building a pretty rough version of what you want to build. So with my first business, it was a case of I did a food blog, got people subscribing to my food blog, and people would literally WhatsApp me and say, "Oh, I've just had this recipe and it was amazing," and I could start replying to them saying, "Oh, great! Well, look, I'm starting my own takeaway in a few months, and I'd love you to come." And I built up like a couple of hundred people who were like, "Yeah, we're super excited for it to open." And on my first day, we had a chalkboard. The chalkboard was full of all those people writing their names and being a part of the journey. So, it's not a race. Fundraising is not a race. Build relationships. I guess the next thing really is just be ultra mindful that taking money from anybody and failing is so much worse than you think it'll ever be. It's like way beyond what you imagine it to be, because the way that we're taught is fail fast, fail fast, fail fast. That's because you burn loads of money spending it on other stuff, and ultimately you remove yourself from the market. So of course the people at the top are like, yeah, fail fast. Fail fast, go on, have a great idea, burn everything to the ground and fail fast, and life continues for them. No real threats. Everyone's just failing around them. So again, failure is pretty much inevitable. So when you're raising funding, be in the mindset that you're going to fail, or that failure is an outcome that is highly likely. And with that in mind, start to question, do I really need that 50K? Taking that 50K off that person and I don't return it, how is that going to impact my personal life? And again, separating yourself, you've got your business and your personal life. To raise funding, you have to leverage your personal self. And it's personal, it is personal. You're taking money out of someone else's bank account, putting it into yours, and you're effectively promising them a return. So, be mindful of that and only take what you need, and be ruthless with that. If you need 50K, see if there's a way that you can do it for 10 or even 5K, and see, and see if that validates anything. 5K in my bit, even in this business now, 5K changes the landscape significantly. If I just got a random 5K today from a micro ticket investor, I'd try some Google ads that we've never done before. I'd probably run some Facebook ads or some LinkedIn ads. There's always something you can do that'll validate something. So don't think that you need to raise 500K because I need to build this platform and I can't do anything until I've done that. That's wrong. That mindset is wrong. And it trips you up in later life, and it trips you up when it fails. So again, make sure that you understand what you're getting yourself into when you're taking money. And with that in mind, make friends, make connections, be nice to people, but be realistic. I love crowdfunding for that because it's got 3 core principles: fair, clear, and non-misleading. If you do that, you have a successful crowdfunding raise, and I think you should look at that in your own business. Again, books, courses, podcasts, it's just not for me, just because I don't have the time or energy to put into that stuff. I find that listening to other people and their success stories in a third party context, it frustrates me. I don't feel like I can take action. I don't feel like I can ask questions. I'm inquisitive. And I think that's why I like something like this, because if you've got questions, write them to me and I'll answer them. I'll do an hour video answering them. I'll post it on my LinkedIn. You can come on and ask me them yourself. So I think, again, for me, it's too one-dimensional. I'm not a massive fan of that sort of stuff personally. Personal reflections, and beyond the business side of things, how has the entrepreneurial journey influenced your personal growth and perspectives? I think the ego is really something you need to understand and get comfortable with, because I genuinely think I'm the best fundraiser in Europe for pre-seed startups and seed stage startups. I believe that. I believe that with every inch of my being. From a molecular level, that is just me. I think I'm the number one. And in the past, I wanted to be known for that. So there was a news article, car designer to the stars. And ultimately, when I failed, they use that against you, you know? They use that as local pimp my ride fails and goes bust, and car pimping for him goes bust. So, you know, I learned that what you push out comes back. So again, I think that ego and personal growth are very linked. And we see, you know, Andrew Tates of the world, and there's lots of strong opinions out there who really force this need to have an ego and own it and be confident with it. I think the ego is very important because, you know, if I genuinely don't believe I'm the best, I can't ever be the best. I think it's as simple as that. But again, you have to learn to balance that. And again, that's separating it. So when I take off these headphones and I, you know, like I'll show you, this is me. Look, I'm instantly disconnected. I didn't even feel like the same person then. That's something I've learned to do over the years. You know, when I'm sitting here in this chair, I'm a capitalist. I'm good at my job. I'm very capable, and I put as much time and effort in being here. But you know, the personal reflection of my own personal growth, I've realized that when I go outside of this bubble, that's not me. You know, my talents as a fundraiser don't match my talents as a father. They don't match my talents as being a friend, and they don't. You know, that's something that I've had to kind of get used to, and that's something that comes from failure because, you know, I lost a lot of friends. I employed friends and I lost a lot of friends. Friends I'd had since I was 16. So, you know, relationships I'd had since even longer, you know, a decade plus were just gone overnight. And that's all because I mixed it all together. You know, I just mixed it all together, and it's so dangerous to do. So, you know, my biggest reflection and my biggest personal growth, I would say, has come from being able to understand who I am, you know, what makes me good at my job, and how to separate those two things. Think about it. How do you maintain balance between the demanding world of startups and personal well-being? I don't. I don't, and I don't have any secret to that yet. Maybe that comes later, and I think it comes with success. To be honest, I've at the moment got a burning desire, and we spoke about that in this. But I'm burnt out. I'm totally burnt out constantly. I don't sleep well. I wake up in the middle of the night and think of things, and have to listen to space podcasts to try and get back to sleep. And I get up in the morning and I put this headset on and I get stuck in and I get relief when I'm working, and I feel less anxious when I'm here because I can be in control of things as opposed to being outside of it. So no, I don't have the answer to that yet. There's a guy who I love. He's called Mitch, and he's sold his fashion business. And he's now got a framework for his life, and that works for him. But it can't work for me, unfortunately, because it talks about regular sleep patterns, and I don't feel like if I go to sleep at 10 p.m. every night, then I'm not getting the chance to be me, which is sometimes playing Crocodile Simulator. Just stupid things like that. I play Crocodile Simulator, like Dinosaur Simulator with my brother, or I play first person shooters, or I do city builders, or Ivan and I will act as a lot of role playing games, and I guess that's a bit of my escape. And if I don't have the time to do that stuff, then I don't feel like I'm being me and doing the things that I want to do. So sometimes I have to stay up late because I can't go to sleep at night until I feel satisfied that I've done my job properly, which I've normally done, and then ultimately being myself for a minute before I switch off. So no idea how you maintain balance. I'm 100% 100 mile an hour. I'm blessed to have an amazing family and partner who supports me. I'm blessed with an amazing business partner, Ivan, and I'm amazed with kids who are tolerant. And again, I grew up in that family. I understood what it was. My mum wasn't always there because she was at the restaurant, and my dad wasn't always there because he was at the restaurant. But I had my grandma, and we lived with my grandma and granda, and that was enough. So having understanding kids and taking the time to teach them about what I do, and I say to them, "Oh, do you want to run the business one day?" And they're like, "No, I don't want to sit on calls all day." And it is what it is. But anyway, that's 50 minutes of me, and Granted, some crazy stuff in there, and there's more to share. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be back next week. I may interview a guest. I may take questions that undoubtedly come off the back of this. But most of all, thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great week.